Joining us now, former Republican governor of New Hampshire, Chris Sununu. He is now president and CEO of Airlines for America and tells me there is life after politics. But I'm going to ask you, if I can, Governor, to dive into politics a little bit.
You bet.
I'm sure you still look at the polls. Americans are increasingly unhappy with where the economy is or how they're feeling the economy is not working for them. Are your fellow Republicans in trouble come November?
No, not necessarily. I think there's still a long way to play out. So anyone who's trying to predict where the elections are going to go today that's a very foolish thing to do. The polls that matter start in early September, right? And the economy will always be the top issue without a doubt. It isn't just whether inflation's up or down or groceries are up or down a few percent or a few there. It's the lived experience. And I think that's what I try to remind folks. Don't worry about the data. Worry about how people feel about their lived experience. And I always say, I saw some of those clips coming in. It's always a very dangerous thing to tell people you're going to lower costs. That would be massive deflation. That's actually a bad thing, for the economy if you go too hard and too strong on it. So the things that matter, things like pharmaceuticals, right? Getting control of pharmaceutical costs. The president did a very strong job on that. Getting energy costs under control, very strong job. The housing and affordability is still a tough one.
Energy costs.
Yeah.
The reality is energy costs have not fallen. The average residential electricity price was up 6.7% in December from a year earlier.
The vast majority of that is because of state taxes. When you look at that, the actual raw material of the energy, the fuel that is being opened up, that's actually down. It's the transmission costs and the state taxes. Yeah. So that's why I say politicians have to be very careful about saying we're just going to lower costs, because there's so many other pieces that can really come into play. I represent Airlines for America now. The one I'd say product in America where you have seen deflation is actually in airline costs, right? So the average price of a ticket today is less than 2019. It's really astounding. And so it's more affordable than ever before. More families are traveling than ever before. We take a lot of pride in that on the airline side. We try to promote that as much as possible. But again, we're going to drop
Can I ask you about something related to airlines? Because in an acknowledgement, I think, of the administration understands that they have a problem with what Americans feel about the economy.
Sure.
They're talking about doing a couple of different things. One of them, Congressman Greg Steube told USA Today he expects Trump to pursue a domestic agenda to help Republicans in swing districts, including his alliance with Senator Elizabeth Warren to put a cap on credit card interest rates. So you're the head of Airlines for America. Airline credit cards are a very big deal for business travelers who do still exist. Is that something you would support?
The airline credit card deals are critically important to the consumer and to the flyer. Millions of people use them, not just business. Millions of people use those points. If you start doing things to credit cards that have an effect on that.
Putting a cap on interest rates.
If that starts limiting people from having credit cards, then yeah, we have a problem across the country, not just in airlines, but all across. Or start an ancillary programs where your point system is no longer and the loyalty programs go away. Millions of Americans shop with those. 1 out of every 4 families has a credit card attached to an airline point system because that's how they travel. That's how they make it so affordable. That's why we can keep the prices so low. You start capping. Look, I'll have the banks explain the math, the economics of it. But when you start capping interest rates, you start telling banks you have to shift your risk model. And that might mean telling folks you can't have a credit card, or low-income families have limits in terms of what they can do that they don't have today. That limits the whole infrastructure, and it really affects airlines, those point loyalty programs and all those things that keep airlines and air travel so affordable today. So, yeah, that would all be at risk. There's a domino effect. It sounds good. And I'm not saying there's not a subtle way to do it. But if you do it so harshly without understanding all these other dominoes are going to fall, and in my world, it starts taking loyalty programs away from 1 out of every 4 American families that rely on those programs to actually, travel.
But if they're paying lower interest rates, wouldn't they have more money in the long run? That would make up for that.
Because some of them won't even have access to the credit. A bank isn't going to say, oh, we'll just lower the interest rates and that's it. They're going to say, well, some folks, we have to remove risk somewhere, right? Because we're being held at a cap here. That's why every time you mess with a free market, you limit competition. Someone has to pay the price, and my fear is that low and middle income Americans are the ones that are going to end up paying that price.
So it would have a real
negative repercussion.
One way that the White House wants to, it says, help average Americans, you say would not help. But let's talk about the speech he's giving tomorrow at Davos, because it's supposed to be about how he plans to make housing more affordable. Another move to help Republicans in November,
Sure.
everywhere you go, people talk about the affordability crisis in housing. How do you expect that to play with Americans? I mean, you know, you could say also at a time when Davos is populated by a bunch of billionaires, but also where it's being dominated, frankly, by Greenland. And conversations surrounding Greenland.
So a couple things. When you talk about housing affordability in this country, the number one thing you can do is attack regulation. Regulation drives the cost of building a house. The permitting process drives huge costs in terms of building a house vastly across the country.
Arguably also makes them safer.
Well, sure, you need some regulations. Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
But are we talking about affordability? Yes. Homes were safe 5-10 years ago, but with all the regulation that was built up primarily in the previous administration, it adds costs. Every regulation is a dollar. Every regulation has some value, but every regulation has a large amount of cost that you have to attribute to it.
Is it also about corporate competition and corporate buyouts of a lot of housing?
I absolutely think that that has to get under control, and I think the president understands that. That's where he's going with that. So there's a couple avenues there to make housing more affordable without truly affecting a free market.
Governor, let me take you back to New Hampshire.
That's where I love to be. My favorite place.
More than Washington, D.C.? Come on. Okay, we won't even.
I'm in Washington now. I'm a pretty big cynic of the town, but I got to tell you, I love the airline industry, and the town's treating me pretty well. So.
Okay. They're among 12 states now vying, and it's pretty funny to read some of the things that they're saying about the other states. They want to kick off the Democrats' 2028 contest. What do you think? Not that you care about the Democrats, but what's in it for any state to want that? And does it matter to a New Hampshire?
Look, New Hampshire, it absolutely matters. New Hampshire has earned the first. We don't just have a tradition. We've earned the first in the nation primary because we have the highest voter turnout. We have the most, frankly, the smartest electorate. It doesn't take. We don't care if you have money.
Because they voted you in?
In fact, no. Because look, the more money you have, the more name ID you have, the more we're going to doubt you. You have to earn it on the ground in a retail sense and talk to people and get the feedback. And that's why it's just a bigger free market of politics than anywhere you're going to find. And yeah, if the Democrats want to try to skip New Hampshire like they did last time, didn't work out so well for the Democrats and Joe Biden. At the end, they came scrambling back because that's where the action is. That's where the media is. That's where the earned media is. We don't care about your money. We don't care about your name ID. You got to earn it with the people, unlike most other states where we'll raise a bunch of money and run a bunch of ads, and that's how we'll win. That's not real campaigning. That's not connecting with the voter. We just do it, frankly, a little bit different and a hell of a lot better than everybody else. The Democrats want to kind of have their own pathway. It's failed them every single time. New Hampshire is the pathway for both parties because everybody gets involved.
Former Governor Chris Sununu, 11 other states who would love to have this debate with you. Thanks for coming on the show. Appreciate it.